Hey, Jane Fendelman, preacher on the mountain top from the living room. I already hiked. I'm back. It's December 15th, 2014. Sacred sexuality. This has been coming up a lot around me, friends, clients. It's a mind blowing subject. Tantra, Kundalini energy. We were born of sex. In the sweet medicine of the twisted hair teaching, they say that our sexuality is the hub of the wheel that we are. It's at the center of us. In some teachings, when there's a sexual violation, they call it a soul injury, a soul injury, a wound to the soul. So I'm going to speak from many different spiritual teachings because they all have such profound philosophies on this subject. There's so many beautiful philosophies on this subject. In Tantra, the yoni, which is the Sanskrit word for vagina, is considered the gateway to the heavens. Every soul comes down through a woman's body. And so they call it the sacred space. The word yoni means sacred space, and their word for penis is lingam, which means wand of light. And the sole purpose for the lingam is to bring light in to the feminine space, to light the feminine space. The first time I ever thought about sexuality in a higher way was around age 30, 31, and I was in one of George Adair's lectures. He's the founder of Omega Vector. I call him the man who raised me. He was my soul dad. And George was giving a lecture called The Many Levels, The Many Levels of Sex. And he was talking about how we can have sex at the physical level, and that's how most people do it. That's the way that most people are aware of it. Where we do it just like animals. We copulate, and it feels good, and we make a baby. Sometimes not. So George was also talking about not just the physical, but the mental, emotional, and spiritual levels of sex. So this was my first time hearing that people can come together sexually at a physical level, and a lot of people don't realize that they're also, and they're blending their energy in that way at a physical level because there's energy transference. And if you put your warm hand on a cool wall and you leave it there for a little while and you take your hand away, your hand will then become cool and the wall will become warm wherever your hand was because of energy transference. So we can take two objects or beings or animals in the material world and put their bodies together, and they will experience energy transference, where actual energy from their body will pass through to each other. They will share energy and mingle their energy, physical energy. They will also blend their emotional bodies. There's physical bodies, and there's emotional bodies, and there's mental bodies, and spiritual bodies. And all these bodies blend. And so I remember George saying, so I think I was 30 or 31 at the time, so about 25 years ago, George said, when you have sex with somebody, you may make a physical baby, and whether you do or not, you also make spiritual babies. And he said that whatever energy you come to bed with, whatever intention you come to bed with, you will make a spiritual baby out of that intention. So if you go to bed with greed in your heart and you take something from the other person, like your sole intention is to use that person or get something for yourself, then you will make a greedy spiritual baby that will live with you. And if you've ever had a naughty kid living in your life, it's hard. It's work. So I remember at the time thinking, wow, I got a lot of spiritual baby. I grew up in the 60s, so in the 60s, there were a lot of people having a lot of unconscious sex out of greed and just taking something or just for fun, which is fine. Really, there's nothing wrong with it. But anyway, I remember it was the first time in my life that I consciously chose celibacy. And it's a great choice. It's not for everybody, but it's a great choice sometimes for some people to cleanse the palate and clean the slate and begin again, begin anew. So that was an awesome time. It was an amazing time. And I'm not saying it was easy. When you're learning how to redirect all of your sexual energy, which you can up your center line, and it empowers all of your life and work in a very wonderful, beautiful way. The sexual energy is the energy that birthed the universe. In fact, I'm convinced that the Big Bang, which the scientists cannot figure out what it is, what came before the Big Bang, but it's when the universe started. There was an explosion, and I really believe that that Big Bang was an orgasm. I really believe that. And everything is showing us everything. So if we want to understand how everything works and where everything came from, we just look at how things work and where they come from. And things come from sex. So it's a creative force. It's two opposite forces meeting, a masculine and a feminine force. It's profound. There are some teachings, religious teachings, that call it an original sin. They call it a sin. And Jesus Christ said, and I learned this through the esoteric teachings of Jesus Christ, that he talks about sin. In fact, he, I think, was the first person to use this term, sin, and it means, sin is not a sex. Sex is not a sin. Sin is an archery term, and it means that the arrow missed the mark. It missed the bullseye. It doesn't mean you're guilty and bad and you're going to be punished and go to hell. In fact, Jesus said that heaven and hell are a state of mind that we experience on earth. And we do when we separate ourselves from God, and you can replace the word God for the word love. And so when we separate ourselves and imagine that we're separate from love, we experience all kinds of pain. So sex is not a sin unless you miss the mark. And in Tantra, you make a prayer before you choose to have an orgasm. Say you choose to have an orgasm, you make a prayer and you dedicate that orgasm to something. Peace on earth, to health or wealth, or greater consciousness or service to humanity. And the Tantrikas believe that when Jesus said, before you enter the gates of the temple to pray, pause at the pillars and make yourself a righteous man. And they believe that by pillars he meant, because they say, some people say that Jesus taught somewhat about sacred sexuality, and that the pillars are her legs, the woman's legs, and that you pause at the pillars and make yourself righteous, because in Tantra, the man always pauses before he enters the woman and says, may I enter your sacred space? And he makes sure that he has a proper intention before he enters the gates of heaven, gates of the temple. to make a prayer. And they say that he said sex is a prayer. You're making a prayer. And they also say in Tantra that the feminine wants to be ravaged and ravished and ripped open to God. And lots of people don't understand why women go after women are attracted to the bad boy. It's not really the bad boy that they're attracted to. They're attracted to a particular kind of masculine confidence that is able to pierce her veil, her feminine veil, in a conscious and respectful and strong and powerful way, and tear her open like the lotus blossom. And the lotus is the flower, the symbol of knowledge in Hinduism, I think, and Buddhism. Hinduism for sure. So the woman doesn't want a bad boy. She wants a man who will confidently pierce her veil with his thunderbolt of love. It's true. It's what women want. So sacred sexuality. So I'll leave you with a homework assignment. Begin by redirecting all of your sexual energy, and first, if you have a beloved, redirect all of your thoughts toward that person. Don't have any stray, wandering sexual thoughts about anyone else. So be clear that way. And if you're a single person, see what it's like to refrain from sex or to have only conscious sex where your sole intention is to serve the highest and best for the greatest good of all concerned. And then when you do make love, just realize that you are calling on the powers of the universe and that they are flooding through your body and that you're sharing them with another person and that you're connected body, mind, and spirit in the absolute highest and most profound way that two human beings can connect on earth. Pure love. I don't even know how to describe how big it is. And you can experience it with yourself when you're making love with yourself. So sacred sexuality, I could speak on it for hours and hours, but look it up and think about it and maybe practice it. See what it's like to practice it. So from the highest place in me to the highest place in you, love.